In today's video, I go through everything we know about the DC Designs Concorde, which is coming to Microsoft Flight Sim, hopefully in a few months. This video goes into a bit more depth on a single add-on compared to my other videos, incorporating months worth of information, news and screenshots we've had on this aircraft, hopefully resulting in a more informative video. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe, but now let's get right into it. The Concorde you're seeing on the screen now is a Flight Sim export over. It doesn't actually fly, it just looks very nice. But now let's talk about what we know. So to start off with the basics, this aircraft should be released in either late February or early March 2022, so not very long. It will be coming to both Xbox and PC, although it's quite likely we'll see it on PC first, as this will be released by DC Designs on Flight Sim retailers such as Sim Market, probably before it will reach the Microsoft Flight Sim Marketplace, which can have a lag time of up to 4 months. So you may be waiting a bit longer for that if you do buy through the marketplace, which means if you're on Xbox, you might not see this as soon as those who see it on PC. Sorry to be the bearer of somewhat bad news, but at least Xbox are getting a rather cool aircraft. Now, going off recent development updates on the Facebook page, at the current moment, this aircraft is around 90% developed. And while it won't be study level, it will still be highly detailed, with most of the buttons being modelled in the cockpit to a high degree, if not all of them. It doesn't mean they'll all work as they do in the real aircraft, but it means they'll have some sort of function. This includes the flight engineer's station, and indeed some iteration of the INS, which is the inertial navigation system. This is basically the predecessor to modern day aircraft computers, specifically your FMC and that kind of stuff. Basically, it incorporates accelerometers, gyroscopes and basic computers, well not very basic, but in today's standards basic computers, to dead reckon the aircraft's position. Dead reckoning is a form of navigation still used by private pilots, not so much seen in aircraft nowadays commercially, but it basically gave the pilots the latitude and longitude of the aircraft going off various sensors, as opposed to the modern computers we see today built into the FMS. This would then allow for some sort of navigation that most of us are used to, i.e. intercepting waypoints and travelling on airways, because the aircraft knew where it was basically. It is rather confusing, and sadly we won't be getting this to any high detail in this sim, basically because DC Designs have said it would take too many months to incorporate, as it's an entirely new system. As opposed to this, we'll be getting basically an INS kind of looking system, but it will have the Airbus FMC in the background. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I think even if they made some sort of strap down INS, if that's possible, I think it would work better than just using an Airbus styled one. But as he says, a modern FMC will be modelled and textured to emulate the original INS, meaning it will have a level of familiarity with most Microsoft Flight Sim pilots. He says that it's a sensible compromise to what will already be a very complex aeroplane. What do you guys think about this decision? I think it's probably needed, seeing as DC Designs are aiming not necessarily for the study level market, but the biggest market range possible. I guess it's just a business decision. Now, keeping with cockpits, as I've already said, the flight engineer station will be modelled. Most buttons, if not all, will work. Now, we're still waiting for a few more details here, and we haven't got any videos out as of yet with this aircraft, so we can only rely on screenshots. I have to say, it looks very, very special, especially in dark night conditions. I think that's when it really stands out. The photos of it at the moment are basically just parts of the engineer's station. He says that it's basically too big to fit on one screenshot, which makes sense, but you've got to remember most of these, if not all of these buttons, will work to a certain degree. Doesn't mean they will work as intended, but it means they'll have some sort of function. A very important part to older aircraft, of course, flight engineers are seldom seen nowadays. They've been replaced, ironically, with the likes of the FMC, which is what we were talking about earlier. The entire cockpit will be PBR textured, which is kind of standard nowadays. but it will be at a 4K resolution, which is very, very nice. And I think that can be said for the whole aircraft. We can expect this plane to be 4K from the outside. Now from the outside it looks beautiful. At the moment, with their recent screenshots which came out at 7 minutes past 1 in the afternoon yesterday at the time of the filming, you can see we've got very basic PBR. Now it does worry me somewhat that this is very basic PBR textures with only basically a month to go until late February. So to be at this stage shows that there's a lot of work to go, so I would not be surprised if this aircraft does get pushed back until March, if not April. But who knows, maybe they'll be sticking with this sort of quality, although it is basic PBR. He says a more accurate finish will be applied towards the end of the project, but I don't know how quickly he'll be able to handle that. I guess we'll just have to be surprised. From the outside it does look pretty good, and the modelling has basically been complete. We're just waiting on texturing. Very iconic Rolls-Royce Olympus 593 engines. Of course the Concorde has 4 of them, and it was the only turbojet in commercial service with reheat powering, and of course afterburners. An incredibly high spec engine for its time, incredibly efficient also for the time, with a thermal efficiency of around 44% in Super Cruise, which basically means they're supersonic for a prolonged period of time, which of course Concorde was when it was at cruise. So incredibly efficient engines. I said reheat there, that's basically afterburners to my American friends. Reheat, afterburners are exactly the same thing. Be interesting to see how they model the afterburners or reheats, because of course they don't go too well in Microsoft Flight Sim normally. Now some nice things we'll also be getting, seeing as we've talked about the bulk of the interior and exterior. Of course the flight model as well is going to be as realistically modelled as possible. I guess it'll be our first true Mach 2 aircraft in the sim, so it'll be interesting to see how they go around that. I know we've had some fighter jets that have Mach 2 capability, but none to this magnitude of it being an airliner, purely because there's no supersonic airliners out there that ever reach the level that Concorde has. So, you know, they are really charting a new territory here. But moving on from the flight model, which is intended to be pretty good, let me say something the developer has said. He said, while this rendition of Concorde isn't meant to be study level, the sheer volume of instrumentation and functionality present in the flight deck means it will be significantly more complex than any of his other aircraft to date, including the original Concorde he built for Flight Sim X and P3D. This shows to me that this is going to be a real showstopper. DC Design's aircraft aren't always the most high spec, but they're always fairly standard, and certainly a popular choice for many, so the fact he's saying that it will be more complex than any of his other aircraft is a really promising thing to hear. Now sticking with this, and I thought this was very nice as well, I've been going through some of the comments and comparing it to the previous Flight Sim X version, where you got a manual for a London to Paris flight. With this aircraft you'll be getting a manual, a full tutorial for a London to New York City flight. This will basically explain to you how to fly over to New York City at supersonic speed to a high detail reflecting real world procedures. I think that's a very nice thing, and shows the developers' attention to detail and of course attention to looking after the customer, because it is going to be rather difficult flying one of these aircraft. So the fact that we've got a full flight tutorial, hopefully in paper and probably in video footage via YouTube, is something that shows how good this project could be. Pricing wise, which is the final thing I'm talking about, it won't be extortionately priced, but we haven't got any numbers so far. I imagine it will be around the 30 to 40 UK pound mark. And there'll also be a collection of liveries, most notably British Airways Lander, British Airways Early 2000, which is the one you see nowadays, and of course Air France, maybe some fictional liveries as well, but we'll just have to see. There we go guys, that's basically all we know about the DC Designs Concorde so far. It's a really beautiful aircraft, and I've got to be honest, the screenshots that I've been showing on this video probably tell me more, probably tell you more than anything I could ever say. Hopefully we'll see it soon. Also, one thing about shared cockpit, which is a potential future thing coming to Microsoft Flight Sim. This aircraft will be shared cockpit ready. When that does happen, it will be possible to do that, hopefully, as they say in the comments on one of the posts. which means hopefully in a year's time you'll be able to fly the Concorde with your very own co-pilot. Very exciting. And last bit of attention to detail, basically when the aircraft is flying at Mach 2, because heat of course causes things to expand, you'd find that inside the cockpit gaps would appear, especially around the engineer's station. DC Designs says this will be modelled, or hopes to be modelled, and if we see that, that's going to be mighty impressive. The idea that the actual position of the aircraft in terms of speed and temperature affects the cosmetic model of it, I think that's something really special. It's a beautiful aircraft, I cannot wait for it. Be sure to check out all the posts on Facebook, hopefully we'll see it very soon. There we have it guys, are you excited for the DC Designs Concorde? I know I am, it could be something really special. Let's hope they keep it up and let's hope we get it soon, but not too soon where it's rushed. Thanks for watching guys, be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you learned something new, and if you didn't, tell me something down below that I might not know. That'd be really helpful, I love hearing about the Concorde anyway. From me today, that is all, I'll see you around. Thank you to my first class channel members, thank you to HXMe, Maxim LaBelle, Simon Schmidt, Captain Matt Russell, Siefra, Ethan Bubeck, Jonathan Desmond, Fanny Leibenberg, hello and Owen K. You guys really do help me out. Channel members are a great way to support the channel and these guys really do mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. From me today, I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.